everybody. Good evening. This is Diane, one half of the Real Housewives of Alaska.
And this is Marnell. I'm having a terrible allergy attack, so if I sound a little more Fran Drescher than usual, it's because I've been nonstop sneezing for the past couple of hours, but we're doing this live, so let's go.
You're pushing through just for me.
I am. So if I go dark for a little while, it's like because I don't want to be human on the mic, so I'm muting myself and sneezing or blowing my nose or whatever.
You need to text me if you're going to be mute for a long time so I can, muddle through. All right. Well, tonight we are podcasting the movie The Boys in the Band.
The 2020 version on Netflix.
Yes, exactly. So the play released in 1968, the original film released in 1970, and there was a remake that was released by Netflix in September of 2020. So that's the one that we're doing. And we're doing it based on the recommendation of a friend of mine because he said that the perfect gay trilogy in his household was And the Band Played On, which had Matthew Modine and was based on the book by Randy Schultz. Philadelphia, which of course had Denzel Washington and Tom Hanks. Mm-hmm. And then this movie. And I was like, oh, well, I've seen the first two. I've never seen The Boys in the Band. What's it about? And he's like, oh, you should watch it. So I got a hold of you and said we should do this for the Real Housewives.
So did he recommend the 1970s version or this one?
No, he actually recommended the Netflix version, and I think part of it is that it's kind of hard to find the 1970 version in a streamable format.
True.
I know when I looked on Amazon, I could not find it other than purchasing it as a really, really expensive DVD. So no, his recommendation was this version.
Gotcha. Well, I love the cast, so it was a good pick for nothing but that.
And you
nothing for that, but that. God, now I can't talk tonight.
You probably know, and this will go into some of the stuff that I've got in Housewives Weekly, but this cast was actually together for the Broadway production of this as the play in 2018.
Yes.
So this is actually kind of a reunion tour for this cast.
And I'm actually shocked that I had never heard of neither the play nor the movie or the writer or anything like that, because I do actually love stage theater. Before the pandemic, we were season ticket holders at our local stage theater, and we had been for many, many years. And we went every season to every single play, and I would actually love to see this on the stage.
I would definitely go to see it on the stage. Would I go as far to say I would love to see this on the stage? I don't know that I'd go that far, but if it was produced locally, I'd go and see it.
Yeah, and for me, that's the thing. Don't get me wrong, I would love to see it with Zachary Quinto and Jim Parsons. But,
right.
I don't know. I have this weird affinity for our local theater. They're very good at what they do.
Okay, so I'm going to interrupt because people probably don't know, but Juno has a nationally recognized, tons of awards, tons of accolades, small theater. So, it's kind of more than just your little local theater. I mean, anyone who doesn't know theater probably would never have heard of it, but people who are well-versed in the theater community would be like, yeah, that cool theater in Alaska. So,
for those who would know it, if you are listening, it's called Perseverance Theater.
I can honestly remember doing some acting classes there when I was in high school, and I had a wonderful time. It was a very welcoming environment. Everyone was lovely. I had a wonderful time.
Yes, I do very distinctly remember you as a theater geek.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
The Miracle Worker is totally sticks out in my mind. I vividly remember watching you in The Miracle Worker.
Hi, Diana. Hi, Steve. I am a theater geek. It's just been a really long time. Yeah, The Miracle Worker was fun. That's probably not an adjective people use with that play very often, but I had a wonderful time doing that production.
Theater itself is fun. I have often wanted to actually get involved with
You
theater
should.
here, but like they're so serious. Like I'm like
yeah.
there would be no way I would like get any real roles or anything. I think I would probably like do like the swapping out of the sets.
A stagehand.
A stagehand, yeah.
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 All right. So what's your rating for The Boys in the Band?
So I have to say, you and I talked about this before the show. I rated it kind of low because I don't feel like the subject matter was resonated for me, but I also don't think it was directed towards me. There was nothing that I disliked about this movie. I loved the cast, I loved the set, I loved, the plot, the whole thing, but I did kind of rate it low. I rated it a 3.2 cruel party games.
Oh. So I feel guilty that I didn't like this movie better. And it's the same thing. I think that, and the band played on had a hook for me because of the medical angle. And Philadelphia had a hook for me because of the medical angle. This felt like a glimpse into a reality and a culture that I'm not a part of, and that was fascinating.
Yes.
But I agree with you that in terms of it being something that resonated intensely for a 50-ish middle-aged white woman, it was good. I mean, that cast was phenomenal. It was beautifully written. There were some amazing lines. It's the same thing. I just think that I wasn't quite the audience. And I hate saying that because that sounds really homophobic and stuck up and that's not how it's supposed to be at all. I don't want to sound that way. I don't want to be that way.
But having said that too, and having, I didn't get a chance to watch the documentary that was based on the making of, or the remaking of the movie for the 2020 Netflix release.
And we'll talk a little bit about that.
I just have to say that, like, I get it. Like, one of the things that I really liked about the movie was that they didn't really modernize it. They kept it the late 1960s version-ish. I mean, you look at it...
They even kept the language, and there was some discussion in some of the stuff that I read about, and I can't believe I'm going to say this word out loud in a podcast, but using words like nigger and using words like faggot.
Yeah.
I know. And actually, I want to say that it was Jim Parsons who had those lines, and he was saying in the interview, I was just sick to my stomach whenever I had to say those lines. But the truth is, you don't whitewash history like this. And this history is about being part of an oppressed minority.
Right. And I love that they didn't update it to the point that, like, you look at it and you see a modern film. But it also, like, I looked at it, and the only real way I could tell it was the 60s
was the costuming?
Actually them using corded phones.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like the costuming, I'm like,
so for me, the costuming was, I mean, and of course the language, but the costuming definitely.
It was basically couture to me. It was just that they are in the New York art scene, and that's the way they dress,
Oh, that's funny.
It was
like the big wide collars and the bell bottoms didn't say anything to you. Zachary Quinto's horrible glasses didn't say anything to you.
Zachary Quinto's hair said more than anything else to me. But if you look back at the original movie, and I'm sure the original stage play, the casting, the Zachary Quinto's casting and his look are spot on.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So I have some interesting stuff from the documentary about that, which we'll talk about. But I got to give you my rating still.
Oh, okay.
So it's 3.75 birthday parties from hell out of 5. What a horrible night.
And we'll get into it.
Oh my God.
But yeah. Harold did not seem to be too phased about it, though. He kind of got a kick out of the whole thing.
Do you kind of get the feeling that that's the way they all were whenever they got together?
Oh, definitely. I mean, Michael said it in the beginning that it'll be 6 screaming queens, and then he's like, "Oh, they're aging fairies," and And so, I mean, you knew you put alcohol into that volatile mix of personalities, and that kind of stuff probably just happens. And we'll totally get into it. You're totally getting into
Bycatch already.
Yeah, or bycatch. But there are a lot of groups of friends who are like that. Like, the people that I'm harshest about are like the people that I love the most. Like, I will be meaner to my best friend than I will be somebody that I hate, because that's how we get along.
Okay, we'll talk about it. Because I really struggled, and we're definitely getting into stuff that we're going to talk about in our review. So I'm going to hit you with some numbers. Okay. So this was announced in April of 2019, and it was announced by Ryan Murphy, who everybody knows from Glee. And it was really funny. One of the reviews that I read was, "Oh, thank God they didn't let Ryan Murphy do anything other than produce." He has a $300 million deal with Netflix. Ryan Murphy as a writer, director, producer. So this was part of his deal with Netflix. That was the number that I wanted to throw at you, was the 300 million number.
That's insane. Do you know how many subscriptions that is?
Right?
Do you remember when Netflix was the tiny little, company
you got a DVD in the mail every now and then?
Yeah. I think I actually even signed up when it was called Quickster.
Oh my gosh, I don't remember that at all. Okay, a few more numbers. So on Rotten Tomatoes, this film has an approval rating of 82%, average rating of 7.2 out of 10. On Metacritic, it has an average score of 70 out of 100, and it's considered to be generally favorable. Don't really have anything about budget, because again, it's a Netflix thing, but we do know it's somewhere bundled into that $300 million number. I doubt that it cost that much.
Yeah, no.
Considering it basically, you're right, had one set and had some good costuming, and that was about it.
Yeah.
And some really great actors, but yeah. So I don't have anything about the title. I was going to research a little bit more about where the title came from, and I just didn't leave myself enough time.
Yeah, I didn't come across anything in my research about why it was titled what it was titled.
Let me do a quick search and see if I can find anything. Because I'm a terrible podcaster and I should be prepared ahead of time.
There was a kind of a sequel that was released to The Men from the Boys, I think it was called.
So this is interesting. The title is from the line in A Star Is Born, when James Mason tells a distraught Judy Garland, "You're singing for yourself and the boys in the band."
Boys in the band. Okay. I did run across something to that effect.
Well, there you go. That's where the title comes from.
Interesting.
So our writers, the screenplay for the 2020 version it actually had two writers, Mart Crowley, who wrote the original play, and then Ned Martell, who I'll talk about more, because we're going to talk about Mort a little more in a minute here. Mart Crowley was the main author. Ned Martell is actually, I think he must be someone who has done quite a bit of work in the gay community, because it looks like he's done a lot of work on I'm mixing him up with the director, excuse me.
Okay.
Erase.
Actually, Ned Martell has done a couple of things.
Well, so he worked a lot on Glee.
Right.
And of course there was a strong gay influence in that whole series, and Ryan Murphy is gay, I'm pretty sure.
Well, and so American Horror Story, which he's written
worked
and
on
produced
American
for,
Horror Story. Yeah, exactly.
Is pretty open with a lot of their gay characters and their gay storylines. So or LGBTQ storylines. So I think that counts.
Plus, and the thing is, it doesn't really matter. It's very interesting to me that, I was thinking about it, and there were no women in this film. Mark Crowley was gay. Pretty sure Ned Martell is. Fairly sure the director is. Ryan Murphy's heavily involved. I mean, it just, and every single actor in that documentary that I watched is out and gay and successful.
So Ned Martell also produced a Netflix series called Hollywood. Yeah.
So not only that, but Joe Mantello, who's the director, who I'll talk about here in a second, he's one of the actors in Hollywood. Mm-hmm. And you told me to watch that because Jim Parsons is in it.
Yes. And so Hollywood is a series, a short-running series that was put together for Netflix, and it has real-life characters and real-life storylines, but it is telling an alternative universe's history, version of history, for Hollywood in the late 40s through 50s. And so it sort of retells it in the light of if gay and black characters had been more widely accepted early on, what would have happened.
Interesting.
Yeah. It's an amazing 8 or 9 episodes, I think. It might be 7. But I absolutely loved it. It's got a huge, amazing cast. I'm Mira Sorvino, Jim Parsons, Samara Weaving, like you said, Joe Mantello, Rob Reiner, Queen Latifah.
Wow.
Yeah, there's so many amazing actors and actresses in it, and it's a what if story, and it was very, very well done. And Jim Parsons' character in it kind of reminds me of his character Michael in this. So we'll get into that.
So that kind of leads me into Joe Mantello. So he's got both actor and director credits. So director, he did this. He did a show called A Very Wicked Halloween, which was a Broadway production. And I'm thinking it was probably a tribute to the play Wicked, or the musical Wicked.
Oh, yeah.
He did a movie back in the 80s, no, I'm lying, the 90s, called Love, Valor, and Compassion, which actually, when I read the plot, Jason Alexander was one of the main names that I recognized in it. When I read the plot, I was like, that's kind of an updated version of The Boys in the Band.
Oh, my goodness. So I absolutely loved that movie.
How funny. I've never seen it.
I remember seeing that movie like 10 years ago, and it is so sad and funny and poignant and just, yeah.
Go ahead.
I always think of the character John Glover not the character, the actor John Glover in the movie is just it stuck out in my mind. I don't even remember that was the name of the movie, but as soon as I clicked on it and I saw the title picture, the thumbnail picture, I was like, oh, I know that movie. I love that movie. If you
Well,
liked Philadelphia, you would love that movie.
oh, well, I may have to put it on my list, but my list has gotten very big lately, so it'll be there at some point, I imagine. I'll be like, what was that movie again?
That, and it looks like it might be hard to find. I don't see it coming up as like no on Amazon Prime. Oh, it says available on Amazon, but
Yeah, I'm sure you can rent it, or I'm sure you can get it. Oh, good Lord. Excuse me while I mute myself.
so it looks like you can get Love, Valor, Compassion on DVD for $46 on Amazon, or $2 if you own a VHS, which, I mean, who does anymore? But
Please tell me you didn't hear me screaming, shut up.
no, I did not hear you
Okay,
screaming,
very
shut
good.
up.
So I actually
Yeah.
remembered how to use my mute button. Yeah, I don't know. I imagine I could find it on Amazon or on iTunes when I'm ready to watch it.
Yeah, it's just about $50 on DVD. So
Okay, yeah, no.
So what is with like these like amazingly poignant gay stories I feel like they're taking advantage of the gay community by like
Oh my god, now that is going a bit far, don't you think?
overcharging for these great movies from the past.
I'm sure Donald Trump owns the rights. All right, enough of that. Let me finish with Joe Mantello.
Okay.
So, the couple of things that I wanted to say to him before we say about him before we moved on is that he actually does have actor credits in Law and Order. And he was in a movie called The Normal Heart that I believe one of the actors that was in this movie was in as well, that I really want to watch because it's actually about a gay activist who is trying to raise HIV awareness in the 1980s. So that's a little more, like, that's got a little more of a hook for me.
Okay, it's got Mark Ruffalo in it, and it's got Taylor Kitsch in it, who is adorable.
I am embarrassed to say that I don't know who Taylor Kitsch is. So,
So the reason he was in Wolverine. He was in one of the Wolverine movies. He played he played one of the mutants. I cannot remember, but he was also in the television show Friday Night Lights, which I had to read the book Friday Night Lights for a criminal justice class.
oh my God, you got forced to read.
I got forced to read, but
Oh my God, the normal. Oh,
has,
so Jim Parsons is in it.
Yes,
And Matt Bomer.
Yep, and B.D. Wong, who plays very main character on Law and Order SVU.
Right. And it's got Jonathan Groff, who was in Glee. It's got Julia Roberts.
Got Matt Bomer.
Yeah,
Boomer?
that's what I said.
Yeah.
So he plays the really handsome, like, all-American guy who keeps saying, I don't live in the city anymore in this movie. So, yeah, no, that's definitely a movie that I want to see. And it's an HBO movie, so I can get it with my HBO subscription probably still.
Ditto.
All right. So, did you pick a separate hero, or are we going to talk about the same hero?
I talk about the same hero.
So, I said I wanted the Housewives hero to be Mark Crowley, who is the playwright, the original playwright. And he is really heavily featured in that documentary, which is why I think you might want to watch it.
Definitely. It's funny doing the research on him. I found that I think that I probably would enjoy his story, his personal story, which I think he put a lot of his personality into this story.
Well, so he, in the documentary, he says basically that he is Michael and that his friend Harold is the model for Harold in the movie.
Yep. And so just the few things that I did learn about him, he led such an interesting life that I wouldn't mind seeing something more about him. So
The documentary was great because they used his voice a lot. I mean, he narrated the bulk of it, and there was quite a bit of information from him about it. They talked to the different actors, which was really neat. Um, I definitely the thing that I appreciated the most was learning that he had written Harold after a friend of his with whom he had that kind of love, hate, cruel, best friend kind of relationship. And the friend was actually a very well-known dancer and choreographer.
Howard Jeffrey.
Oh, I thought his name was Harold too. I'm sorry.
No, Howard Jeffrey, who died of AIDS in 1988,
Right.
who the play is dedicated to.
Right. And he was so sought after that, like, whenever Barbra Streisand had to do any choreography, she wanted him to be the person who was dancing with her.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was just really neat. I enjoyed hearing his story. His credits were like 80s credits other than this film. So he did Heart to Heart. He worked on Dynasty.
Mm-hmm.
The thing that really warmed my heart was that he got to see this get made, and he got to be a part of the documentary because he actually passed away in March of 2020.
Right. Complications from open heart surgery.
Yeah. So, and you know, the other thing that was really neat, and I didn't quite figure out exactly who they were interviewing who said this because I was trying to work and watch the documentary at the same time. But the person said, you know, I didn't have any role models for aging gracefully as a gay man, and I'm able to look at Mart, and he is my role model.
Yeah. So when you watch the movie on Netflix, the thing that comes up that like automatically the ads run for is the documentary about the movie, and I do remember the guy saying that he's like, you know, I'm 52 years old and there is no role model for aging gracefully, and so yeah. And that's actually one of the things that made me think, you know, I think probably I really liked this movie, but I'm sure it resonates more for people who didn't have role models, who don't have role models like that, who didn't see themselves their selves and their lifestyles reflected on screen. So I completely understand that.
So I don't have tons to say about him. I just wanted to talk a little bit more about him. And I would really strongly encourage anybody who decides to watch the film to follow it up with watching the documentary. It's about 28 minutes long. It's totally time well spent. It made me appreciate the film a lot more.
Yeah, like I said, learning about him made me enjoy the movie better. One of the quotes that I found from him, just it kind of sums it up. I feel my whole life is observing, and I wish I could get into the action. I came from a very ugly background and a very ugly small town with people with very ugly attitudes, and I had the need for beauty, and I think I share that with lots of people. That needs to come simply because all of this sordidness and unhappiness and resentment, as well as the calamity of growing up gay when I was growing up, that's a roundabout way of saying I never felt too included.
That's really sad.
Yeah, and you know, did they mention his relationship with Natalie Wood in the documentary?
They did, and they said basically that Howard, sorry. Howard, and Natalie Wood were kind of all besties, all three of them.
Right, and Natalie Wood kind of had this close inner circle, and it included a lot of LGBTQ people, and she was very friendly towards that, you know. And she actually hired Mart as her secretary and something else for a while, and then Crowley worked as Wood's assistant for her husband, Robert Wagner, which of course leads to his work on the television show Heart to Heart. There was something else. So he is actually the godfather to oh Oh, sorry, it was not the Godfather story. When he was, after several scripts were not produced in the mid 1960s, he was broke and fell into a depression. Close friend Natalie Wood offered him psychoanalysis for a birthday present, which at first he turned down, but he wrote about it in his journal. A few months later, regretting not taking her up on the offer, but not knowing how to ask her for it, he took the journal to her house and opened it up to the page and showed her, which led to her paying for 6 months worth of appointments with him at a Los Angeles psychiatrist. He credits her for saving his life.
Wow.
Isn't that amazing?
That's a cool story.
And I kind of think without Natalie Wood, we wouldn't really have a Mart Crowley or this amazing play that came out in the late 60s, which just blows my mind.
Right before Stonewall.
Yeah, somebody had the balls to just put it out there. And then it's been around all of these years, and it's been such a success. And
apparently it got quite a big following even in 1968. People like Jackie Onassis.
Yes. And it showed, it had over 1,000 showings between 1968 and 1970.
That's cool. That's very cool. Because, one of the things that they said, and you may have seen this as well, was that he was concerned for all of the actors who agreed to act in 1968, that it was going to be a death knell for their careers.
Right. So you probably saw the thing that I saw, that when it premiered in 1960 off Broadway, the actors that were in the play drilled a hole in the set so that they could spy on who was in the house's best seats. And the initial week saw Jackie Kennedy, Marlene Dietrich, Groucho Marx, Rudolf Nureyev,
a ballet dancer,
very famous Russian ballet dancer, and the New York Mayor John Lindsay. So that it blows my mind that I just always think that people were so close-minded that I'm surprised.
Nah, you got to be thinking about all the changes that were happening in the late 60s.
Right, but you had Stonewall that happened a year later, and
not quite a year. I think it was a little bit. Now you're gonna make me look up the date of Stonewall.
I think it was in 1969.
Wow, my little sister is way cooler than I am. Yep, June 28th, 1969.
Yeah. And one of the reasons why I read that stuck out in my mind was they were talking about one of the bars that was used briefly as the background for either the very beginning or the very end. It's when everyone is either coming to or leaving the party. One of the bars that some of the actors are in is a very famous LGBTQ friendly bar, that's been open since before Stonewall, and it's actually right around the corner from Stonewall. So just reading on the show, I was doing some reading about Stonewall. So
very cool.
The more you know.
All right. Well, I've got a little bit of stuff for Housewives Weekly.
Okay.
So, NBC did a review of this when it came out, and there was just a lot of good information in the review, which is why I cited that particular review. So, the title of their review was that the movie still resonates after 50 years. And that was where I learned that this cast was in a 2018 Broadway production, and it was actually Tony Award winning. So very cool for Mart that he got a Tony for this movie, or for this play, before he passed away,
Yeah.
Um, let's see. It's really interesting. So this movie I keep saying movie, play, whatever form you see it in. It actually, this production, that's an excellent, there you go. So it has very mixed reviews. It's either loved or hated. Like, it doesn't sound like there's much in between.
Well, and so I understand some of the hate. We'll get into that probably.
Oh, we probably will. I think we will. I'm going to bring it up because I think this may be where you're headed. And this was what I wrote down from the review. So the people who are critics of this production say it's basically, quote, bitchy queens who languish in misery and self-hatred.
Mm-hmm.
So they're either people who are like, well, I mean that's the quote, bitchy queens who languish in misery and self-hatred. So there's either that, or there's the, you're bringing forth this a look at a group of people who, prior to the play originally being produced, are people who kind of lived in the shadows and who weren't seen as fully formed people. And, so it's like one or the other. It's loved or hated. So I thought that was really interesting. Sad fact, by 1984, 5 of the original actors, the director, and the producer of the original off-Broadway production were all passed away from AIDS.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I looked at one more review and wrote this up for Housewives Weekly just because I thought it was really funny. So Roger Ebert gives Jim Parsons a terrible review.
Really?
Really. And, really loved Zachary Quinto, but did not like Jim Parsons. I completely disagree. I thought Jim Parsons was great.
Me too. I thought it was actually the other way around. And
that's kind of the way I was too. And he actually really felt like Jim Parsons was kind of outmatched by the writing, that he just didn't have the chops to do the role. And I was like, what? Did we watch the same production? I'm not sure that we did.
There's not a lot of things that I agree with Ebert on, though, so take that with a grain of salt.
The other thing that he said is that he prefers the original film. And
the original is always better.
And with this version, quote, your mileage may vary.
Though, I say this having not seen the original, I think it was probably due for an update, because this is a cast that I think strongly reflects the LGBTQ like famous people, celebrities now. Whereas I don't, sometimes it's hard to go back and watch people that are not of your era. And that's, something that I loved about seeing this reboot of it, is that while having different actors, they sort of kept the same dialogue. They kept the same feel, they didn't modernize it to the point like everyone had cell phones and, so.
I think it would have lost a lot if they'd tried to do that, because the whole point was kind of this internal struggle in a time when gay culture wasn't as accepted as it is now.
Right.
Although it was very interesting. Another thing that they talked about in that documentary is that people who are watching the updated version, the new version, they said, people who are Mart's age or a little younger will say, well, we're not like that anymore. And then people who are young men who are watching it will be like, that's exactly what it's like dealing with being gay in this day and age. So it's really, really interesting that people, as people do, I mean, as we all do, right, have such tremendously different experiences, although they're coming to things from a similar place. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. So, but I thought it was really funny that
results may vary.
Right. I just thought it was really funny that they get either, well, that's not us anymore, or that's totally what we're still dealing with.
Yeah, that's not you anymore, Grandma. That's us, the younger generation. You may have grown out of it, but we are growing into it.
Yeah, really? The only other stuff that I have in Housewives housekeeping, I don't have any updates on the Satanic Temple. Darn. I do have unfortunate updates on the COVID-19 crisis. So we are, as of me looking a little while ago, at 397,000 deaths in the United States. And I can remember hearing predictions that we would be at 400,000 deaths by the presidential inauguration, thinking, I think they're overshooting the mark. I don't think it's going to be quite that bad. And I'm so sorry I was wrong.
Yeah, I wish you had been right that it was overshooting it, but yeah.
I told you. Oh, go ahead.
You've had your second vaccination, so
I have. On Wednesday, I will basically have reached about as much
possible
immunity as I'm going to get.
Yeah.
I said to you, I'm going to say it on the podcast. I'm not quite sure if, when, or how we're going to get around to it, but Phil had suggested that we should talk about the insurrection that happened in the Capitol last week before last.
Right, and I'm hoping to probably add some inauguration stuff into that, because we're going to see a very, very different inauguration. They're going to try as much as possible to make it look like it's a regular inauguration, even though we all know that it is not. But it will be interesting to see come Wednesday.
Yeah, I don't know. The thing that I will say about the protests and the insurrection and all of those things is that we're podcasting Sunday night, the 17th of January. The headlines today were that the protests fizzled out. The pro-Trump protests fizzled out today. Mm-hmm. I'm not convinced that we're not still going to see some more open insurrection before inauguration and after.
No, you don't do shady crap when people are watching.
Right?
Like, not when they're prepared for it. Like, when the boards and fences come down off of the windows and lawns is,
that's when you start throwing Molotov cocktails.
Right? I mean, we forget that, there's already been a ton of stuff that's happened, years prior to this. There was the guy with all the QAnon stickers on his white van who drove a bomb to, was it like CNN or something? And then, the plot to kidnap a governor, and like, there's been all kinds of craziness, and I don't think we're going to see it on the mass scale like we did anytime soon. I think you're going to see the lone wolves come out here in the next few months, unfortunately.
Yeah. So, I don't know. The only other thing I wanted to say about just our craziness in the Capitol on January 6th is that the insurrectionists who have been rounded up are now saying, hey, we were just following Donald Trump's orders. I mean, like, I've read multiple statements from multiple different insurrectionists now who are saying, well, that's exactly what the president told us he wanted us to do.
And I get that. Like, I guess that's a good defense, but I'm also like...
No. Like, they proved at Nuremberg that I was just following orders is not a reasonable defense.
Right. And if more than half of the U.S. is like, yeah, no. I get their defense, but it's still not a valid defense. It's like ignorance of the law is no defense. So... Yeah. You knew that what you were doing was bad, and you filmed yourself doing it, so better luck next time, champ.
Right. So, we will probably talk more about the political state we find our country in, but not more tonight.
Well, I heard an ironic thing here recently that because of something that was signed into law by Trump during the BLM protests of the summer, it has to do with the whole not destroying national monuments. That
I know where you're headed, and I'm going to let you finish, but then I have rebuttal.
Okay. What I had heard, and I haven't done any digging into this, but it would really be funny and ironic, is that everyone who broke into the Capitol is facing like an extra 10 years because of this national monuments thing.
So I had heard the same thing, and I discussed it with Todd, who is my political sci guy, and he said that actually that was some stuff that Trump tried to do as an executive order and doesn't hold water.
Ah, okay.
So, yeah, no, I was under the same impression. I was like, irony alert, but no.
It's still ironic. It's just unfortunate.
Unfortunate that it's not accurate.
What was not good for the goose will not be good for the gander.
Right. Housewives housekeeping, and this is stuff that you and I talked about last night, so I'm not going to belabor it, but for anyone who is interested in Stephen King's The Stand, we are podcasting it on Biters right now. We just finished reviewing episode 2. I think we're both enjoying it. I'm enjoying it more than Marnell is.
Uh-huh.
Marnell liked the 1994 miniseries better. I liked the book better, but we're both enjoying it.
Yes, and it gets better. I've given the last 2 episodes low ratings, but having the foreknowledge of, the 4 episodes that I have knowledge of now, and I have the 5th episode waiting to watch, my ratings will go up, I promise.
So the other thing that I said when we were doing Biters last night was that I had picked up Mr. Mercedes, which is a Stephen King novel, because I was really struggling to find something that I wanted to read after I finished The Stand, because I enjoyed it so much. And I will say that I highly recommend Mr. Mercedes as well.
I
couldn't put it down last night.
I have 4 Audible credits because I'm so behind in listening to even audiobooks, because work has just been so crazy that I have to actually concentrate. I can't even listen to like podcasts or anything. I can't listen to anything. I'm just so focused on work lately. So maybe Mr. Mercedes will be one that I eventually pick up with a building audio credit.
I'm enjoying it very much. I'm having a hard time putting it down.
Very cool. Well, I mean, Stephen King is brilliant, so.
Yeah. All right. I don't have anything else. Do you have anything for housekeeping or the weekly?
I don't. We are fast approaching Walking Dead season, finally. Thank you. So can't wait for that to come out. Is it season 11 or is it 10C? What are we calling it? I don't know.
It's 10C. I think that's what we're calling it.
So weird. I should have just made it 11.
Well, All right. So I'm going to have you go first. Hit me with your summer.
So my summer was just all of the pithy, dry, witty one-liners. This was hilarious. There were some things that I caught upon my second watch that I didn't laugh in on my first watch because I didn't catch it, because it goes by so quickly. They're so witty. It's so funny. You shouldn't wear heels when you're doing chin-ups.
Yes, that was very funny.
Yeah, he twisted his back as he landed on his heels doing chin-ups. You shouldn't wear heels doing chin-ups. And then he's like, I have a weak grip. And the guy's like, oh, where I'm from, that's called a limp wrist. There were just so many funny one-liners and Emery was responsible for a lot of them. But even in those times when it was supposed to be serious, when they were playing that really cruel party game of phone a friend or whatever the hell it was, when Hank is calling Larry from the second line and the house line is ringing, and he's like, pick it up, it's for you. It was super funny. Yeah. And like we were talking about before this, this my friends and I all treat each other terribly. Like, we're each other's like worst critics, and like we, have pithy one-liners that we snap back at each other with, and and of course, like the worst things we say are about ourselves, but we're all self-deprecating. But I kind of related into this that yes, they all kind of like were mean and crappy to each other at certain points, but that's part of very deep, close personal friendships, So there was a lot of love behind it, but yeah, just the humor of the show, and like you said, they didn't update a lot of the language, and so I have to imagine that a lot of the jokes were the same as they were in the 70s version of the movie,
I could be wrong, but I think it's the original script. I don't think they changed anything.
Yeah, because I mean, just some of the, like, instead of saying therapist, they were saying analyst, so yeah, I just love the humor of it all. It was good fun. So what was your summer?
Well, I don't know that I would necessarily say that this movie was good fun, but okay.
What do you do for $20? I do my best.
So the funny thing is that Mort was saying, or Mart, I keep thinking Mort, but it's Mart. He was saying that he actually knew a hustler who worked... Oh, I forget where he worked. I mean, somewhere like Atlantic
Island.
City or... Yeah, Fire Island. Yeah. You said you didn't watch the interview.
I read.
But he was saying that basically, like, some of the things that he had the cowboy character say are things that hustler said to him. And he was like, I couldn't write better lines.
Uh-huh. Yep.
Yeah.
So, okay, your summer.
Okay, my summer is the chemistry between the ensemble cast. So I recognize that Harold and Michael are the main characters and that Zachary Quinto and Jim Parsons are the stars because of the roles that they're playing. But, everyone was necessary and the ensemble was so good, and I thought that they all, even though it was cruel, they all related well to each other. I thought they played off of each other well. They seemed very close. It was a really seamless relationship between the members of the cast. I thought it was well cast.
Yes, I definitely agree. I had my favorites, but I really did love them all.
So that's my summer. It's pretty small.
Yeah.
What was your winter?
So my winter, now having said that, like, all of my closest friends are the ones that, we bite each other the hardest. This, at some points, was very hateful and judgy. And it was to the level sometimes that it was, like, shocking and uncomfortable. I personally have a hard time with the other F word. The one that autocorrects to duck, I'm all for. But the other F word, I have a hard time.
Oh, you mean like the one that I blurted out at the beginning of the episode?
Yes.
That I'm still feeling guilty for saying both of those words, just like Jim Parsons.
And so even when it's a group of people that the slur is usually directed to, who sort of reclaim the word for themselves and can use it with each other, but the rest of us can't. Even when they say it to each other, like, personally, it makes me uncomfortable. I have no problems with them saying it to each other, but it's such a squicky, it's the ick factor, like Jim Parsons was saying, is like his character was saying, it's the ick. And so, and just some of the horrible things that, like, Michael was saying to Harold, the little jingle he sang about being a Jew or so. I was just like, oh my, God, like, and I get it. So Harold said it best. He said, guilt turns into hostility. Isn't that right, Michael? And I have to imagine that having to live this closeted life in a time, you know, and having somewhat of a taste of normality in some aspects where this group of friends could get together and be each other, but like the rest of their lives are so repressed. Their parents either don't know or know and hate them, or, you know,
I didn't get the sense that either Harold or Michael was particularly closeted, though.
No.
I mean, maybe it's stuff that they didn't talk about outside of their circle of friends, but I didn't get the sense that either of them was particularly in the closet.
Well, Michael was definitely still in the closet with his friend Alan.
I don't think so, but we'll talk about that in the bycatch.
But so sometimes it was just very uncomfortable for me to sit there and like have that nasty backbiting that, you know, only the people that you have let into the darkest places of your life know about. And it's very difficult because the people that love you the most are the ones that can hurt you the most. And I feel like that's what this was these people, these 6-7 friends, all knew the darkest corners of each other's personalities. And, you know, you get a little booze into them and you get a little resentful of other things and other people. And yeah, sometimes it was very uncomfortable. So that was my winter. That was my bad.
Well, I'm going to feel horribly guilty for saying my bad, but I'm going to say it anyway. I really felt like Zachary Quinto was probably my least favorite part.
Yes, absolutely.
And that makes me feel guilty, and it makes me feel sad.
He was such a bougie snob.
Well, you know, and I was going back through and I was thinking, okay, so first of all, I really loathe the character that they had him play in that AMC series Nosferatu. I really thought that was a horrible series. Like, I watched it once and thought, this is a horrible waste of my time.
I was going to say, I don't even think I made it through, like, the second or third episode.
And,
so I don't even think I saw Zachary Quinto.
And honest to God, I looked back through his IMDb, and the only thing that I know and love him from, and I love him, is as Spock in the Star Trek reboots.
Huh.
So I feel really guilty for saying he was my least favorite part of this movie, but he was my least favorite part of this movie.
Interesting.
Yeah. But I will say that when they interviewed him in the documentary, I was like, there's that guy I love. So I feel like an awful human, but there you go.
So he was in multiple seasons of American Horror Story, playing a couple of different characters.
Which I have got to be honest, I never got into it.
So
never.
I loved every single season except for Cult. I believe that you can completely skip over that season if you choose to watch the series at this point, and really not miss much. It was a very weird season. It was a very politically heated season, and it was weirder. I mean, American Horror Story is weird already. Like, you didn't need to add that. Yeah, it was bad. But he played a couple of different characters in a couple of different seasons, and he was amazing. And I loved him as the characters, and I love him at, I love him as Spock. But yeah, there's not a lot that I know him from other than those two things, even though, he's incredibly famous. There's just not a lot of things that I've watched him in besides those two.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't have anything to say.
I watched the first couple of episodes of the series Heroes, which he became really big in. But I honestly think it was like I don't know, Lost was on at the same time on a conflicting channel or something, and that was before I had a DVR or whatever. So I fell off watching Heroes, so, and now it's like way too late. So
I don't have anything to add.
So my road construction, my ugly. The whole storyline with Alan and Mickey, as he would call Michael, Mickey.
Right.
I really thought it was interesting because, you know, we all kind of am like, you're like, he totally called Michael so that like he could, because Alan was leaving his wife and he was going to come out to Michael, and like, he decided not to because of this party, but then he decided to show up anyway, and he was confronted with all of these men who basically were holding a mirror up to, you know, his true self, and he couldn't face it.
That's interesting. I like that take.
So and of course we never do truly learn why Alan was there. But the way that Michael exploded on him about their mutual friend from college, and how he, you know, Alan basically hooked up with him a number of times, not once, but not twice, but a number of times. And so I kind of like that they left it hanging, that Alan was like, I can't handle this. I'm going back to my wife. I would just rather live in the closet for the rest of my life with my wife and my 2 daughters than, you know, have to live this crazy lifestyle that these 6 guys just showed me, you know? Like, I really think I love that they didn't actually ever tell us why Alan was there, but they dropped so many hints that you feel like you know, but...
So this is totally in my bycatch, and this is what I kept saying we'll get to, but I mean, I really sincerely believe that it's because they actually were lovers, and that Alan was like, I want to confess my love to you. And then he got there and just couldn't do it.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
I mean, not current lovers, but they actually were lovers, like, back when they were in college.
Right. They had a few nights where they were so drunk. Right?
Right.
So yeah, that was my ugly. Is it was a good ugly. Is that the kind of side storyline around Alan, and that they left it. They didn't actually ever completely resolve it. So what was your road construction?
So my road construction was actually your bad, which is the cruelty.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there is just so much cruelty that it was really, really hard for me to it was particularly the cruelty between Harold and Michael, but it was also the cruelty that they kept directing at that poor kid who was the hustler. They were so mean to him. And yeah, he wasn't super bright, but he was very sweet. And I mean, they were just nasty. And I really struggled with that. And, you know, there was part of me that was kind of like, is this bugging me because of that stereotype of them being self-hating queens?
Mm-hmm.
You know, but then there also was another part of me, because I felt like especially the place where we saw the cruelty as well was in the telephone game that they played.
Yep.
I also felt like a lot of each character was revealed during that game, and we learned more about who they were as people, and we learned some of their deep hurts and deep loves.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I'm really conflicted. I'm very conflicted, but it was definitely the cruelty, and that was my road construction.
Yeah. And it wasn't, and I mean, it prominently sticks out that, you know, Michael was very cruel towards Harold, and he was very cruel towards the Midnight Cowboy. More like an 8:30 cowboy. But even Larry and Hank, they were very cruel to each other. And all of them were cruel to poor Emery, and I loved Emery. Like, I kind of feel out of all of the guys, like, I would have wanted Emery as a best friend, but he could probably wear on you just a little, and so that, like, maybe Bernard. I really liked Bernard. And the telephone game where he's like, why did I call? Why did I do that? It was just gutting.
Yeah. Ugh. Bernard. He was one of my favorite characters too. I really loved him. He was a great character, and it was heartbreaking. Ugh.
So, I don't know if they ever actually mentioned it in the movie, but the synopsis for, I think it was probably what the casting call was for the archetype that they were looking for is, Bernard was a librarian. And I'm like, I think I probably would have, he would have been the guy I would have liked to have hang out with the most
right?
often.
Same
I'm
here.
not much of a reader, but like, he just seemed to be like very down to earth and chill and everything. Emery would have been totally fun at parties. An interior decorator, who is totally not afraid to confront his stodgy doorman at his apartment building. Dope it up. Those two, like, they probably got the least amount of screen time, but they were a couple of my favorite characters.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So that probably takes us into Bycatch.
And I don't have tons of stuff written down for Bycatch. I mean, one of the things that I definitely had written down was, what was Alan's secret? Well, I told you what I think Alan's secret was.
So there was a really small throwaway line that I don't know if a lot of people caught. When the guys were gonna slow dance. I can't remember who actually said it. But he turned down the offer to dance, and he was like, no, I'm gonna sip this one out, and he holds his glass up. So what that is actually kind of a side reference to is the sip-ins of the 1960s.
Oh,
so,
I didn't know anything about those, but you're going to tell us.
So in the 1960s, the New York Alcohol Board basically made it illegal to serve any LGBTQ patrons.
Really?
And so, yes, right around the time that this play came out, a year before Stonewall, gay men and women would go to bars and hold sip-ins. And it was basically, it's a play on sit-ins at what the American rights movement did in the 60s with black people at lunch counters, sit-ins. And so they would hold sip-ins, and they did get the Board of Alcohol in New York City to change its policy to make it stop being illegal to serve openly gay people.
I did not know that. What a cool fact.
Yeah, and so when he's like, I'm going to sip this one out, my other half laughed, and I'm like, oh, I know a fact about that.
This goes back to your Trivial Pursuit comment from last night.
Exactly. It's just like, it's Fort Knox for like trivia information, but like nothing that would like, serve me in my real life. Like, I don't know, the periodic table of elements or something, like I can't remember like sciencey stuff, but trivia. Yeah. In fact, the other housewife, the third housewife, used to try and she used to call in and try and get me on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire.
Oh my God, that's really funny.
Yeah. Alternate history. Marnell wins Who Wants to Be a Millionaire because she knows that elephants are smaller than the moon.
Of course
there
elephants are smaller than the moon.
there's a question about like which of these things is the largest, and the meme, and this is a true story, the woman said elephant and one of the other choices was the moon, and it's like, yes, because elephants are larger than the moon.
My God. I'm a little scared now.
I have to just chalk it up to the pressure of actually being there, because somebody got the whole, like, what is the original color for Post-it notes? They got that wrong, and I'm like, yellow, duh, but, like, had I been there, I'd have been like, maybe it was pink,
Wow.
So, anyway, that's what a sip-in is, and that's why he sipped this one out.
That's pretty cool. I like that. Well, so the only other thing I had written down was the general laughter at but he's married, and they were like, silly boy.
Right?
That has nothing to do with anything.
Right.
Yeah.
I absolutely loved Michael's apartment. He had an amazing New York apartment, 2 stories. It was pretty spacious, and it had a spectacular outdoor space. Like, I would love to, if I ever lived in a big city, I would love to live in a place like that where, French doors out to your own private little balcony,
Yeah, we don't know what Michael did for a living, but it must have been something good, or he must have been from a wealthy family, because
no. So I mean, that was kind of a running thing, is that he bought everything on credit, and he ducked all
that's
his creditors.
right, because Harold made that snarky comment about everything's paid for, the tweezers are paid for.
Yeah, and earlier Michael was talking to Donald, and he was saying, yeah, the only thing I'm good at is like ducking creditors or something, creatively ducking creditors. And he was saying about how his traveling, that he, is always basically running, because he's running from creditors. So yeah. No, I think Donald was probably the came from the wealthier family, because he was the one that moved out of the city and moved home, and only came into the city for analysis, for therapy, basically. And he was driving that sporty little convertible thing, and yeah, it didn't seem like he had to do much work or anything. So, and I loved the line where the one guy's like, "You live with your parents?" And he's like, "Yeah, it's okay, they're gay."
I missed that line.
Like I said, like, rewatching this, I picked up on, like, I laughed at a bunch of stuff the first time around and knew it was coming, but, like, I picked up on a bunch of other one-liners that just totally zinged over my head at first.
Well, do you have anything else?
I don't think so. I think that was pretty much it. But I definitely recommend the Netflix show Hollywood with Jim Parsons. So he plays, let's see, Henry Wilson, who is a real life person who was Rock Hudson's agent or manager or something like that. And of course, famously, we find out, right around his death, there were suspicions for a very long time, but right around his death of AIDS, complications related to AIDS, that Rock Hudson was gay. So in the show Hollywood, Jim Parsons, aka Henry Wilson, was his agent or manager, who we find out in the show, and there have been many tabloids have written about, that he basically preyed on these young, handsome men that would come to Hollywood.
Right. You had mentioned that when you were telling me about Hollywood last night.
So Jim Parsons actually plays like this terrible person who takes advantage of these poor country boys who come to Hollywood to, be an actor. And sure, kid, I'll make you a star and be your agent. I'm agent, and I'm agent to, uh, oh God, the chick from Gone from the Wind. Anyway, but he makes them sleep with him. And one of the things later on, and of course, it follows a lot of true storylines in Hollywood, but it is a fictionalized version of it. But at some point, he tries to make amends with Rock Hudson, and he apologizes to him and says, I'm going to these meetings for my drinking, and I'm also going to meetings about, loving men, and I wanted to apologize. And Rock Hudson's like, I still have nightmares about you, so while a lot of the men that he preyed upon were also gay, it wasn't just that they were like gay for pay or anything. He was still preying upon them, and it was just sort of a very tragic story. And Jim Parsons played it amazing. I mean, you go from watching him in The Big Bang Theory to seeing him in this, and then also in The Boys in the Band. And I mean, the man has the acting chops like you would not believe. So I highly, highly recommend this Netflix series, Hollywood. It's not just about that. There's also they talk about casting. In the show, they have a black woman cast as a female lead, not a black female lead, a female lead, and how controversial it was at the time. And then the writer of the movie is black, and how they're like, this will never get shown in the South, and just kind of how they push forward progressive ideas at this time, post-war and, pre-Stonewall. And so it's a really, really interesting story. So I highly recommend it.
I'm going to have to put it on the list. The list is horrible, as I said, but I'm going to have to put it on the list. And I do have to say that episode 1 did not suck me in. It wasn't until episode 2 that I was sucked in. So just bear with it for an episode or 2. All right. And I'm also going to tell you something that is going to make me sound like a horrible person. And I'm going to admit it. I've never watched The Big Bang Theory. I've never been interested in it.
It is very, very funny. I loved it. And what's funny is it's completely up our alley, mine and the other halves. And we actually didn't get into it until season 2. So, and when we watched the first season, we binged it, and it was like, oh my God, why were we not watching this to begin with?
That's so funny.
Yeah.
Well, now I really don't think I have anything else.
Neither do I, and I also have to find something that we are going to podcast for the Real Housewives next. So.
Because I have made some bad choices of late, and it's your turn to make a terrible choice.
Yeah, was Idiocracy a mutual idea?
No, that was your terrible choice.
Okay.
Okay,
I did Code Black, though.
I feel a little better now.
I did Code Black.
You did do Code Black, and it was really good, but I did Hail Satan, so...
Yeah, and Hail Satan, I mean, we were talking about that, and it's like our first show that we podcasted about was a 5. You can only go down from there.
Right?
Oh.
I guess I'll have to hit Madison up for some more recommendations, because she's actually the person who was like, you really need to watch this documentary.
So I'm getting ready to go out and watch a documentary on the Night Stalker on Netflix. So
I have been very interested in that, actually. Not that I think we need to do that for Real Housewives, but I have been very interested in that.
I think there's plenty of crime podcasts out there that we have covered and will cover the Night Stalker. So I will try and find something non-true crimey, maybe.
Because really, if you want true crime, you need to listen to My Favorite Murder, not The Real Housewives of Alaska. Let's be honest, right?
Right. And, hey, maybe we will wind up doing a episode about the political uprising that's taking place in our country right now.
Who knows?
Maybe we'll do that.
We'll have to figure out something to frame it around, but...
All right, but until then, you girls watch out for those weirdos.
Mister, we are the weirdos. Or is it we are the weirdos, mister?
One of those. We are the weirdos, mister. I think it's that. All right, everybody. Have a good week.
Have a great week.
Bye.
Bye.
Take your